Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Philosophy JKD here. About to talk about some One Piece, but not in particular like a normal theory. I have a set of statements I like to make about where we are in One Piece in light of the world there, but also really related to what's going on and the trajectory of our real world and how it's progressed. So in One Piece, clearly we're seeing events in God Valley currently, right? However, we are learning about the so-called Hunger Games. We're learning about the politics. We're learning about the alignment of the military, the Revolutionary Army. We've learned about the Yonkos, the admirals. We learned about the warlord system. We've learned about the imbalance of wealth in particular countries that are not aligned with the so-called world government. This is very interesting because um, even though the Marines have subgroups inside of them, even though the intelligence aid apparatus has CP9, the military has shield, sword. Um, you have all the not CP9, but you have CP I guess 1 through 0 now. We were introduced originally to CP9, and some of us thought that was it, but no, they're just going through their particular group of intelligence and assassins. However, historically speaking, we kind of see that before the storm, okay, there's a not a silence before the storm, where there's a propaganda wave before the storm. Before something is physical, it's basically mental in the think tanks, and it creates a spirit that matriculates down to the general population to cause massive movements. Can this move in the opposite direction? Clearly, yes, because when the population gain a voice, and it normally takes a while for the population to get enough coherent voices where it's actually held or held in place to be a talking point for the power elite. That's a C. Wright Mills statement, power elite. He has a book called Power Elite. Anyway, um, when that voice from the lower levels is strong enough, it can actually shift the minds of the very powerful. Okay? And this is what makes it so very interesting in history because if you really think about it, the so called printing press, the Gutenberg press, was the first time in history where the general population developed I'm going to use a terminology here, a holographic system. A holographic system is something that can be transplanted from this location or country to this location or country, to this institution, this neighborhood. You know, it matriculates its way holographically and places itself, and therefore creates its own demographic and its own study and how it affects that particular group to mass mobilize or mobilize particular groups. So why am I bringing this up? I'm not quite done with it, but I'm bringing this up just to put an idea out there that the general population take longer time to mobilize ideas that matriculate. Like you ever grow up and you hear that joke? I feel like I started a whole bunch of jokes growing up that are still like hot. You know, I don't know if it was just created on multiple places or if my jokes were just that hot. They're still being said today. Like I'm a very funny person. I keep that side of me inside of here for the right times to be said to the right people who can handle my bipolar nature, if you will. I'm laid back, I'm reserved, but at the same time, I can crack a joke with the best of them. Not just a joke, okay? But I don't want to be known as a person who cracks jokes or a person who raps. So people say, why don't you rap? Why aren't you a rapper? Look, my favorite rapper is Cannabis. To me, he's the best lyrical rapper, but I can understand how he's not perceived in the same light as some people, great rappers like um, Eminem, great lyricist, or in the same vein with like Nas or Jay Z or Rakim Allah, um, or even Immortal Technique. I can understand because A lot of people get caught up in the flow, the rhythm. Then they lose perspective of the actual that's being said, the content, the intelligence, the sophistication, the mathematics, the alignment, you know? And that's really what I kind of value over the rhythm, because a lot of people just look at the rhythm and our whole body chemistry lines up with that rhythm or that flow or that energy subconsciously without our conscious awareness. And so much of my world has been built on reforming not just my environment, but really informing and um, bioengineering myself first. Because before you want to know the world, it'd be wise to know yourself. Because how are you going to change the world, like Biggie said, if you can't change yourself? If you can't change one hair on your head, if you can't even change your own mind process, what good can you do in the world to change it if you still have inhibitions that you haven't dealt with and addressed? So, the general population take longer to move ideas. Now, there have been efforts over time to keep people in the so-called dark ages where people could not read. And if you can't read, then you can't read the messages of people previous to you, you know? So another C. Robert Miller's terminology, and this is a social psychology terminology, the sociological perspective, okay? Okay? Or the cultural apparatus, something that lets a person know what is it that's happening right here, my time period, okay? But how did that situation pop up over here, okay? And how did that affect it into the future, okay? So in One Piece, this is very important because what Ichiro Oda has done has left us fractal images of not just the reoccurring situations, but also better situations on the outset of it. Wano was better after the Straw Hat Pirates and the coalition of Kid and the Trafalgar Law and the samurais liberated their country from basically occupation that was driving that country into poverty and into basically an underclass. Okay, basically an underclass in the sense that they were the people that actually received the pleasures, okay, that got the actual devil fruits. Um, I'm sorry. There were people that actually received real devil fruit powers. Then there were the people who were not successful with the smile fruit and were called the pleasures. In essence, they created another underclass, but a group that could be used as a military force, but the other ones were used as an example of this is why you go with the power elite in Wano. In Dressrosa, we have a similar power dynamic that actually recently we find out is something used by the Celestial Dragons. First off, we had an invading group that basically claimed to have jurisdiction over that land in the past. But things change. People have to learn how to evolve with it or be strong enough to make the change their own way. Like Doflamingo was able to change the leadership in Dressrosa, but went around creating the same tyranny his family had left when they had left the Holy Land. And he used the same tactics of auctioning off valuables as a honey trap for people seeking to get the devil fruit, okay? The mirror, the flame fruit that was held by Ace. But it was not anything that he ever meant to give away to the general population because he wanted to not necessarily recruit them. His agenda was to see the world burn. He didn't want to raise up a stronger pirate or a stronger group for himself. He'd rather see the world burn. And therefore, he thought the best way to do that was to keep the powers to be in his world, the Yonkos, separated from one another, dependent on him, fighting against one another, which would create chaos in his particular realm. But he lacked the ability to truly access and create chaos for the celestial dragons like he probably would like to. So that's an example of energy boundaries, but also not having the ability to truly affect the propaganda or the Overton window of the particular group he wants to affect. So when it comes from top down, it's a little bit easier to influence the general population when you're the only people with a voice. For example, Big News Morgans is the president of the World Economic Forum. I'm sorry, World Economic Forum. So basically, I guess he's the Yuval Noah Harari of One Piece. He's the only voice that comes out of the world government's mouth, but it's not his voice that speaks. He speaks with the mouth of the celestial dragon, or the mouth of the dragon. He's the mouthpiece of the dragon, per se. So, when the people created the newspaper in the real world, this was a very shocking thing to the power elite of this world, because for over 100 years, they've been trying to get the muzzle back on the general population. The internet was not created to be a feminine energy that helped grow something. It was meant to reorganize the world after a massive cataclysm of warfare. That was the stated purpose for the original internet. Now we have offshoots of the internet, and the ability to control narrative and the ability to limit information outside of people's particular religious sects has become more difficult, not just for government, but for theological groups that seek to limit our perspective of information. So when a person cannot control your information that you get, it's hard to give you a narrative inside the bubble information they only want you to have. If the circumference of the information you have is controlled, okay, they know everything you know. Therefore, they can manipulate facts and data on what you do not know that's being manipulated. Therefore, you are now in an open air prison of information. And information that your person can get can create a physical prison in a person's world, in essence. For example, there was a time in history where much of the world believed the earth was flat. And because they believed the earth was flat, in their minds, they created their own prison. They didn't know that operations were set and operations were set up. The Vikings had went to America in a reconnaissance mission with Eric the Red, or was it Eric Leaf? It was one of those Erics. I'm sorry. There were multiple expeditions to America from the Middle East and Africa, around Cape Cod, Africa. But when you go further back in history, you have European skeletons that date back 40,000 years, give or take. But you also have Egyptian bodies wrapped in Egyptian garb, sitting in chairs wrapped like mummies, all throughout Central and North America. Okay? So, since this information is not known, you end up with a remaking of the will, like we have in One Piece, where Dr. Vegapunk is trying to recreate the will, but at the same time, I believe he's lacking knowledge of what still exists as he recreates the will. So I've said in previous videos, the internet is not new. It's not, the light bulb is not new. The battery is not new. There was an individual, I can't recall his name right now, who had won the Nobel Peace Prize for creating an ancient battery known as the Baghdad battery. Okay? Electricity. We see it all around the world, alternating current through ancient megaliths that have alternating current. So, we can't really give that to our modern day inventors. We are recreating the wheel, just like One Piece is recreating the wheel. So, understanding and laying out a foundation with that knowledge that we are creating the wheel, one, information does affect things, but having a sociological perspective of what's happening right now, what happened in the past in our world, but in One Piece, what is to come into the future. We've seen that we have different type of transponder cells. Slowly, we've seen there's black transponder cells that are basically like your deep state that can spy into other people's conversations. We've had video transponder cells. Vegapunk's ultimate goal, or yes, too, from my understanding of Vegapunk, he wants free energy. Looks like he wants free energy, a very Tesla-esque, you know, creating free energy hubs. But he also wants something like what we know as the internet. When the internet comes, the information will go parabolic in a mathematical sense, but exponentially knowledge will increase, travel will increase. The having having a log post won't be as big an obstacle anymore. Information will flow exponentially faster and may be much harder to stop because once it's out there in the so-called cyberspace of the internet, especially if people have the ability to use their equipment as a store place for a decentralized information base, how do you internet kill switch that? If the government has the so-called internet kill switch by having a tabs on big news Morgans, which they show they try to control the news, if they don't have that, how do they control the narrative? And if people in the general aggregate are being hunted down, don't have a voice, don't have a confederation of alliance of people that want to live positively and um are being poached to join the world government, decreasing their power over time, when the government loses that stockpile of energy as a population or as a nation to build their organization, to build their foundation for their world powers, and keep building it stronger and stronger, and in essence weakening the resistance, then the world government's going to be in some trouble because now they have already lost information war overnight. Information is actually a form of power, okay? It's potential power. Knowledge is potential power. It has potential, but wisdom is the ability to wield power in a way that benefits your target, either yourself or others. And that's the reality of it. I talked about the trivium. It's an ancient way of learning where we basically focus on a language, a word. Like I said, enlightenment, they had a word, they identified it. So once you identify it and the characteristics of it, you now have rhetoric. So you have language, rhetoric, and once you have that talking rhetoric together, now you have basically the ability to use that word being in the same plateau, seeing eye to eye. So once a person has those three, it's a three-part system. I could just break it down how it works for computers. I could work it down for mathematics. It's the same thing, You have your math problem. You do the solving of the problem. Then you have your equals equation. You have the solving of the mathematics. So you have your problem or equation. You solve it. Now you got the solution. In essence, through the lack of dissemination of information or good information, people have been able to manipulate the non-knowledgeable masses through a very similar process that now is known as the Hegelian dialectic. Our problem, we create the problem or we allow the problem to grow based on the things that we either knew were going to happen or the elements we set up to happen, okay? We have problem, and then we predict your reaction here in the solving of it, and then we provide the solution. But what Einstein said was this, and this is very neutralizing in this equation. It's a three-part system. You can look at the three-part as a triangle. Look at it as an equilateral triangle, okay? Or if you really want to, If you think that things only work from the top down, you could look at it as an isosceles with the eye, all seeing eye in the middle, an isosceles triangle, but it's really an equilateral triangle, wherein any particular group in that three division part of power can change a thing. So Einstein, what he said was those who create the problem should not be relied on to provide the solution. In other words, if we see the money trail, we see the biological trail, or we see the family trail, the mafia trail, the organized RICO trail, we should not rely on them to give us the solutions to those problems. It would not be a wise thing. So in one piece, now that Big News Morgans is in essence making a narrative that is not being controlled by the Gorosei. It is not under that jurisdiction anymore. He is now a rogue agent. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I didn't go into detail into it. Like I said, I, I'm a person that can go on and on and on and on and on and on because that's just my energy. I get fed by wisdom and knowledge. That's why my name's Philosophy. I'm one who loves wisdom. However, I just want to leave some meat on the bone. I'm just starting this thing. Um, I'm literally not even into my second month yet as a streamer. But what I did want to acknowledge, um, in particular, that I said that Luffy wanted a crew, but he also wanted a bird. Now I don't know much about. We don't know much about Morgan's devil fruit. Allegedly, he can't fly. But I think he couldn't fly because he was too busy taking pictures. I think that Morgan's is more than what we think he is. I don't think he's just a new Joe on the premises. Because one, Morgan's was around during God Valley. It seems to be that Morgan's was around during God Valley. So how old is Morgan's if he is taking out, cameos and putting narratives on stuff? Morgan's may not be a normal character either, or he's older. I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge. I mean, I don't have enough information to make a guess. I can guess. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a coward. I'll put myself out there. I'm willing to be wrong. I've taken some massive guesses that will prove to be right. But Morgan's. Um, I'm not saying he's immortal, but maybe he has more to his ability. Maybe he can make birds. Maybe he will have a bird that goes out to the rest of the world, which will basically influence the minds of people and maybe be the wiring for this so-called new internet that Dr. Vegapunk is creating. He wants a internet. Imagine that, man. In history, in the human history, there have been some things recently that have massively moved the consciousness of our people, our culture, our arts, our fads, our technology, our politic massively. For example, the idea of a constitution, okay, for the founding fathers was greatly shaped on the Aztecs, Mayans, and the Iroquois League of the East Coast. There was a confederation of Native American nations that greatly shaped the perspective of the colonist, not just the Magna Carta out of Britain, Great Britain at the time. Yes, that was a massive conscious shift against tyranny, but actually creating checks and balances inside of a government and the ability to impeach leaders that were not good for the general population was another massive check that moved the idea of human rights massively forward, which made countries, okay, as information traveled the world, really respect the United States in a way that we can never, we don't have. We have stories of so-called, and there's debate where it was so-called Camelot. They talked about this golden age of Camelot. The United States was, because of the rule of law, because of the idea of inalienable rights that come from a figure or God that we don't have to do nothing for. Just by being born, we had certain unalienable rights that we could not be separated from before we even could speak. That was unheard of. Okay. And when you have a certain understanding about power, influence, and human capital, you can make an argument for the existence of slavery. You can make an argument for the existence of polygamy, polygamy, polygamy. You can make an argument for all of those things, a rationality for all of those things. Okay. And that doesn't mean they're bad or good. It just means that they have their place. But up until that certain point where the Magna Carta was built off of, expanded the rights of the general population, which up to this point were in a state of serfdom and the state of human chattel, where the elite could take what they wanted, the gems they wanted, whether it be intelligent people to help maintain their situations or attractive people to help maintain their situations for their particular desires, where they wanted to use this as sport or wherever that sport may have been. There's dark areas there, truly. That was the reality of our world until the information and knowledge was disseminated to other peoples, and then you see what they make out of it based on what they already are working on or what they're already working with in that sense. So it's almost like humanity, unlike the animals who've shown the ability to learn things globally in spooky spaces, almost like quantum entanglement. It was called spooky movement by physicists like Einstein and other people. I think Max Planck talked about it also. Um, Spooky physics. Humans seem to have an ability to be deconnected from each other, but we can build tools that allow us to get the conscious wave if it reaches the zeitgeist or the tool in order to move itself across a stream. And then humanity makes these massive jumps, like Bruce Lee. He brought the idea of breaking out of the fixed martial arts perspective into saying, no, just because I'm from here doesn't mean I have to fight like this. I'm going to focus on what's effective. Okay, I respect the culture for the culture's sense, but I'm not going to look at culture as being superseding of effectiveness and efficiency. You know, I'm going to use my energy to do something good. Science has used the Newtonian physics or Masonic science in order to produce something that could be measurable and put into a lower science of being able to be um, studied, okay, experimented upon, replicated, and then gain power longitudinally, where people are now able to recreate the science and build upon it because the foundation was laid where we had a measurement for it. There's a difference between quantitative, well, quantity, numbers, measurement with pen and paper, and qualitative, experienced. And there's a difference between our, there was the difference, okay, between our science, our what you call natural sciences, okay, and our arts, because arts is like a science too. It's like a science of attractiveness. Psychology is a science. It's like a science of our attractiveness and our soul study, if you will. So, but those two things don't have to be decompartmentalized. The combination for I listened to a guy just the other day. I believe his name was Robert Epstein, Dr. Robert Epstein. He's a psychologist who's taken a very mathematical approach into looking into manipulation of facts and data based on search engine optimization, which is very real. I've seen some mastermind groups out there that use search engine optimization to bring people's searches up in Amazon and on Google, which makes people hundreds and thousands of dollars more than a person is just starting out without such a thing. It gives you a leg up in the game. And then on top of that, there's the data on how to make your purchase or your product most efficiently packaged, most efficiently targeted to the groups that will get you the most money as you're starting out. And then when you have a high point, you branch out from there. Once you got it, you just branch out. You start a high point, you branch out to left and right. So they say Jack can eat no fat and Joe can eat no lean. But when you start up here and you go both full spectrum, Jack and Joe can eat the whole plate clean. And that's where you branch it out. You start from a high point. You start at a high level, and then you work your way down. That's the way I like to operate. But for these videos, I try to just use a particular tool, a high point in the artistic square of One Piece. So what we're really seeing now, we're gonna see an acceleration, not just of information, okay? Because like I said, civilization, war, heaven exists really in the mind. Okay, unless you're talking about a physical heaven, okay, where like if you look at the earth, it has everything that we need. We have food, water, we have the ability to replicate, do everything that is in the scientific model for homeostasis of a living organism. And in that sense, the earth in itself with us on it, not being barren with the earth ain't right without inhabitants. It's just not. I'll tell you, I can prove it. But when it comes to paradise in the terms of environment, that terminology is known as something called ecosify. Okay, ecosify. So I think the best representation I saw of it in an elemental sense is something called Buckminster Fullery, a self-rejuvenation chamber. It looks like a soccer ball. Okay, but paradise in the mind, because the mind is of such a higher density than our physical world. My paradise is not Jennifer Lopez's paradise because Jennifer Lopez is in my paradise and I'm not in hers, probably. So, so that's the best way to put it. Look, you're in my paradise, but I'm not in your paradise. Okay? My paradise truly exists in my mind, in my heart, in my soul, in my essence, okay, my perception. But so too for each one of you. So paradise cannot just be the same for everybody. We are living in a heaven where we co-create our heaven and our hell. And if we have karma, as people say we do, or they say the sins of the father visit upon the son, but what about the blisses of them? So therefore, our actions have a trajectory all the way out into infinity. Everything that we say, do, think matters. Things that we assess or don't reassess matter. Everything matters, or you can take the perspective that nothing matters. Therefore, if you close your eyes to that, in essence, you will create the reality of your heaven where nothing actually matters. And ignorance, in that sense, once you go to that lowest level, not even a low level, once you enter to that depth of darkness, you experience a form of bliss. You've been removed from the world. You don't exist in the world in that sense. You are existing, but you're not living in the world per se. And that's why I think people say you're living, you're here, you're alive, but are you living? Are you living life? Do you have the light of life in you? Sorry, that was harsh for anybody to hear. I'm not judging either one. I'm just telling you there's tools to the reality we live in. But paradise, being of a mental quality, breaks away from the definitions of our physical third dimensional parameters. Our mind is way up there in the fifth and plus dimensions and densities at that. And what I mean by dimensions and densities, you take a square, okay? And you draw a square on a flat piece of paper, you can actually create a third dimension. Okay, You can do that. Okay. Uh, But the mind itself can see above the dimensions of our physical spec. So, for example, you're looking at me. You're looking at my top. You're looking at my bottom. You're looking at my side and my side. Okay. But when you look with the mind, our mind can be in multiple places at once. It's not limited to the particular sheet of paper or the video screen that we are limited to with our limited technology. Even if we had computers that do exist, there are computers, right, where you can put a platform down. Okay, I've seen it a couple times, and it can shoot a holograph up like that you can see more of, but it still is a object that you have to rotate around to see. Our minds are above the third and fourth dimensions. But when I say density, think of it like this: we have basically a trillion cells on the surface of our skin that are not knowledgeable at all about us as a whole, but they're living organisms in symbiosis with our energetic field. So in essence, we are a heaven or a planet to all this life forms. And some people have unique ones. Well, that's not some. All people have unique bacteria, was another organism. But we also have unique life forms. Like some people have unique life forms that just live in their eyebrows. We have unique pathogens that are energetic things like bacteria, which is actually an ancient organism that has lost its cell wall. So we have inside of our bodies, under our skin, trillions of cells and living organisms. Our flesh, we have organs, we have bone, we have bone marrow, we have we have DNA, we have RNA that makes the synthesis of all of the genetic code that we have. Imagine how much life is in us and all around us. So the mind can go there to these places I just described. And that's why I want to say density. Understand density, but also dimension. Okay? Because the world is very large. It doesn't make sense to see all the circular structures around us and believe in a flat earth. Unless someone's trying to put you back in a box and saying, who can we put back in this conscious box? We've run a social experiment. Who, with a limited perspective of the world around them, can't realize that their fingertips around it, their eyeballs around it, their heads around it, the joints around it, the earth is around it, water in spaces around it. Okay? There's other things that are around it on our bodies. I'm not trying to go nasty here, okay? Our earlobes around it, our pectoral muscles around it, our muscles around it, other things around it. The idea of a square is not a human thing. Mother Nature has done many things, but I guarantee you, okay, Mother Nature itself has never made a perfect square. Mother Nature itself has never made a three-dimensional square being a rectangle. Mother Nature don't do that. Humanity does that. You're watching me on a screen, okay? That is a square with four sides and four right angles. Mother Nature can't make that. Human beings make that. Termites make their own structures. Ants make their own structures. We are part of a symbiosis in a larger heaven with the earth. Okay? So, as we evolve, guess what happens in that sense? The energetic distribution of the planet by nature of us evolving evolves. The animals evolve. Look at the chimpanzees that learned how to fish with spears because they saw us do it. During COVID, look at the chimpanzees that started wearing masks because they saw us doing it. Look at the elephants that we grow, not grow, look at the elephants that humanity interact with and how they recognize things about us and learn. Look at how the military has been able to train, attack dolphins and sharks and carrier pigeons. Look at how the dolphins taught the sailors how to respect them so that they can both get the bounty of catching fish. So the dolphins, when you go to the South Pacific, the dolphins have trained the sailors to catch them to catch the fish, let the dolphins free, and then feed the dolphins part of the fish that they catch. We coexist. Dogs did not always run with human beings. It took time for us to build that relationship with our canines. We can still build relationships right now with wild wolves. You can watch those videos on that, okay? It took hundreds of years for camels to build a relationship where they trusted the people manipulating them, okay? But it also took even longer for the people of Europe, where the horses come from Europe. The horsemen come from Europe. It took even longer for them to build a relationship with the human beings, with the little themselves come around camels, because horses are terrified of camels. We co-create a reality. So in One Piece, because of the synchronicity of how it is related to the real world, we are in a jump off point now, wherein the internet is going to massively affect the revolution, which comes from evolution. Revolution does not really come from evolution. Okay? Revolution can bring about de-evolution. Okay? But if the people don't raise their mind quality up, the revolution will only lead to destruction. Until the people evolve, then you evolve. But evolution in itself, in the mind quality, just like the elite have the mind quality that matriculates its way down to the people generally in the aggregate, there's only been a few times in history, most recently the Gutenberg Press, the newspaper, where the people gained the voice. Peoples around the world have left newspapers to us on walls of ancient megalith made out of everlasting stone, stone so strong in density that water doesn't erode it at all. It's crazy. It's interesting how that works. But in recent time, the best thing we've had was the newspaper. And now we have the internet now. We have the internet now where we can now not have to get a physical newspaper. We can just click a button and we can get all this information. And now we got to use the scientific method by using two or more witnesses, every word can be confirmed. You test the spirits, test your sources, learn the scientific method to vet your information properly. I know people that have received doctor's degrees, scientists, engineering, that have fallen for remedial tricks because they got comfortable not checking their sources and who's giving your source. If the person giving you information has a track record of lying or sometimes making mistakes, mistakes can happen for anybody. I've made mistakes. There's things I go back through sometimes, and I'll be like, oh man, I should have said it this way. I, I didn't mean nonviolent compliance. I meant nonviolent non-compliance. I look at my own stuff, and not nonviolent non-compliance is how you resist tyranny, you know. But that's a general mistake that is honest mistake. But if a person lies to you, okay, if someone mistreats you and miseducates you, why should you go back to that source? Or if you go back to that source, gain enough knowledge, you can see how they're trying to fool the people that were in your past experience and your past foolishness, and then bring them up out the darkness because you know where they're at, because you know the game that they're playing. You know how that fruit's not good fruit, it's wicked fruit. So, yeah, basically, I like I said, I had a couple of statements I wanted to say about One Piece and where we are right now in history and where we are in the story. And we are in a jump off point. But guess what? No one's talking about it. Everybody was saying, man, One Piece is ending. I told you no. We've seen life on the moon. Every Gorosei, okay, in essence, has been related to a planet in our local solar system. Okay? There's more to One Piece. And they may have a different name. But if a person gets all that information and they can't see that there's more life, we might be going to some Naruto stuff, literally. I guess this is spoilers for the people that are in like general Naruto, but in later Naruto Shippuden and Boruto, you find out these guys are going to different dimensions and different planets. That's the future of One Piece. It's not just the internet. The internet may help bolster the transport, may help bolster the communications um, from one planet to another, but the portal fruit, that's there. You know, space exploration has already begun in One Piece with 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 um with Enel. He built a craft and went to the moon and saw automatons there that he could control or reanimate. There's more to One Piece. In fact, with that said, I may even want to say I want to actually take um I want to take Enel out of the end game in One Piece, and I'm going to say he's going to be part of something bigger, and you may have a reconstitution or a regrouping of the Gorosei after they are probably defeated in One Piece back to their home bases. And now, guess what, guys? One Piece is going into Star Wars, the Star Wars dimension. There we go. And a lot of our anime are going there. Basically, One Punch Man looks like it's going there. Okay, so those are my thoughts on what's going on right now in One Piece, the trajectory of it. We are in a jump off point. Okay, I've talked about the jump off point in the real world with the internet and the advances in technology, cybernetics, cyborgs. Um, I talked about us losing grasp on reality because the ability to manipulate our information has exponentially grown underneath our noses, not just by the natural growth of Moore's Law, okay, but by the actual growth of our deep state with politics opening the gates to this on us. And now we have to deal with it and comprehend it and not fall for the flood. So, guys, thanks for watching the videos. I really appreciate it. I'm blessed to have been put in a situation where I can actually talk to people like this. So if you made it to this point, I'd appreciate if you like, share, and subscribe. This is Philosophy signing out.